Imagine this. It's your wedding night in the Middle Ages. All eyes are on you, not for love, not for romance, but for one thing only: blood. Yes, the proof that you are a pure bride could mean the difference between honor and humiliation, between life and a violent public death. It's a shocking truth that shaped the lives of millions of women for centuries, and in some cultures, it still does today. Virginity wasn't just a personal matter, it was a commodity, a bargaining chip in the dangerous game of marriage and power. In the early modern era, and long before, a woman's worth was often measured by whether she had kept herself untouched. If she hadn't, she was branded as a disgrace, whispered about, cast out, and sometimes even killed by her own family. But why was society so obsessed with this fragile idea, and how far would women go to fake it? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on history's disturbing obsession with virginity. For most of history, a woman's body was never truly hers. Until marriage, she belonged to her father, hence the tradition of fathers giving away their daughters at weddings. After marriage, she was considered the property of her husband. In many places, sleeping with a man before marriage meant you were permanently claimed by him. This wasn't just about morals. It was about property rights, inheritance, and family honor. A woman's virginity could seal political alliances, transfer wealth, and protect dynasties, which is why, throughout history, entire cultures came up with bizarre, humiliating, and even dangerous ways to check and fake a bride's purity. The obsession with virginity is as old as civilization itself. In ancient Egypt around 3100 BC, purity was linked to honor and the gods. By ancient Greece in the 8th century BC, the idea had evolved into a full social code. Young women wore a special cloth over their clothes to signal their untouched status. The Greek word virgo, meaning maiden, would give us the modern word virgin. But in Greek society, a perfect woman was almost impossible to be. She had to be beautiful but modest, intelligent but silent, hard-working but submissive. Girls were married off at 14 or 15 to much older men, and the law made sure a woman never had control over her own life. They were thought to be ruled by uncontrollable desires that could corrupt men and society. So controlling their sexuality became a national obsession. Even the gods got involved. Athena's eternal virginity symbolized wisdom and independence. Artemis's untouched status represented the wild freedom of the hunt. But for mortal women, purity wasn't empowering, it was a cage. The Romans took things to the extreme with the Vestal Virgins, priestesses who kept the sacred flame of Vesta burning. Their chastity was so sacred that breaking it meant being buried alive. In ancient China, the Zhou dynasty's marriage rituals revolved around a bride's virginity, symbolized by the color red in her wedding dress. Across cultures, virginity was tied to myths, rituals, and power. In Babylon, priestesses' purity was central to sacred marriage ceremonies. In medieval Europe, there was the infamous cloth test, spreading a white sheet on the marriage bed, then displaying it the next day for everyone to see the bloodstains. From Japan's blackened teeth tradition to the Yoruba people of West Africa, inspecting a bride's cloth the morning after, the policing of virginity was everywhere. In some Mayan villages, the bride's mother personally inspected the sheets. No blood, it was a public scandal. Religion amplified the obsession. In Deuteronomy 22, the Bible demands that if a bride's virginity cannot be proven, she should be taken to her father's house and stoned to death. The New Testament praised virgins as spiritually pure. Stories like the Virgin Mary's divine conception made chastity a heavenly virtue. Even in biblical tales, the cost of virginity, or the lack of it, was high. Jephthah's daughter was sacrificed, her purity mourned instead of her life. In Matthew's parable of the 10 virgins, purity represented spiritual readiness for the coming of Christ. In every case, virginity was more than flesh, it was fate. But what if you weren't pure? Across history, women developed desperate tricks to fool the system. In ancient Rome, some used aloe vera mixtures to tighten themselves. In medieval Europe, prostitutes sold Saint Hildegard's dew, a herbal potion to mimic virginity. In 18th century France, chicken blood was the trick of choice. In Asia and the Middle East, artificial hymens were crafted to produce a convincing amount of proof. Today, the same pressure drives some women towards surgery, hymenoplasty, to recreate the illusion of virginity. The methods have changed, but the fear behind them hasn't. Elizabeth I of England wasn't just a monarch, she was a master strategist who turned something as private as her virginity into one of the most powerful political weapons in history. In an age when women were expected to marry for alliance, bear children for succession, and obey their husbands without question, Elizabeth flipped the rulebook upside down. She refused to be anyone's wife. She refused to be anyone's property. And by doing so, she kept both England and her own crown firmly under her control. From the moment she inherited the throne in 1558 at the age of 25, Elizabeth faced enormous pressure to marry. Parliament pushed, her advisors urged, foreign princes lined up, each imagining they would become King of England through her hand. In the 16th century, an unmarried woman on the throne was considered dangerous, politically unstable, even unnatural. But Elizabeth knew that the moment she married, her husband would claim authority over her. And if that husband were a foreign prince, England's independence could vanish overnight. So she played the game better than anyone else. She entertained suitors from across Europe. The dashing Robert Dudley, the ambitious Philip II of Spain, the gallant Francis, Duke of Anjou, but never committed. She dangled the possibility of marriage like bait, using it to win trade deals, political concessions, and military support, all while keeping her throne firmly in her own hands. Her unmarried status became more than just a personal choice. It became the heart of her public image. She cultivated the legend of the Virgin Queen, presenting herself as a woman married not to a man but to her kingdom. "I am already bound unto a husband," she declared to Parliament. "The kingdom of England is my husband." It was a bold, almost shocking statement in a world where women were still considered legal dependents of men. Elizabeth's court became a stage where this image was constantly reinforced. Poets likened her to goddesses: Astrea, the untouched goddess of justice; Diana, the chaste goddess of the moon. Painters portrayed her as eternally youthful, untouchable, divine. In the famous Armada portrait, painted after the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, she stands resplendent in pearls, symbols of purity, and white silk, with her hand resting on a globe as if to say, "I rule the world, and I answer to no man." But behind the myth was cold political calculation. By staying unmarried, Elizabeth avoided being dragged into the costly wars and messy rivalries that plagued married monarchs. She denied foreign powers the chance to control England through her. She kept English nobles competing for her favour, always hopeful they might yet win her hand and the crown that came with it. Her virginity wasn't just a matter of personal morality, it was the key to her diplomatic survival. In a patriarchal age, Elizabeth proved that a woman could wield power not in spite of her sex, but by turning society's expectations about it into a weapon, and in doing so she left behind one of the most famous political identities in history, the Virgin Queen. For centuries, the hymen was seen as proof of virginity. But science has shown it's nonsense. Many women are born without one, and it doesn't always tear or bleed. Still, the myth fueled virginity tests well into the 20th century. Even now, in some countries, the practice continues despite WHO's condemnation. During the World Wars, propaganda glorified women as pure, loyal symbols of the nation, but women who had relationships with enemy soldiers were branded traitors, publicly humiliated and shaven-headed. Comfort women in Asia suffered far worse, abducted, raped, and left to carry lifelong trauma. The cost of a bloody sheet, from aloe vera in Rome to chicken blood in France, from herbal tightening potions to surgery today, history's obsession with virginity is a story of power, control, and fear. For centuries, women have been judged, shamed, and even killed for failing to live up to an impossible standard. As feminist Gloria Steinem once said, "A liberated woman is one who has relationships before marriage and a job after." Virginity is not destiny, but for much of history, it was a woman's whole fate.